Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy Friday to everybody out there watching. We really do appreciate it. So here's the thing. If Anthony Fauci did nothing wrong, why did he get pardoned? Why was he preemptively pardoned? Not after a conviction, not after charges. Before any of that, a preemptive pardon. That has always bothered me. I know it's bothered you because pardons are supposed to close the book on known, established conduct, wrongdoing. But when someone receives one before the legal system has even had a chance to fully investigate, people naturally begin asking why. It seems like a cover-up, and that's because it was. They start wondering what those in power believed might eventually come to light. Now, we've had another round of declassified documents released by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. These disclosures, in my opinion, represent another bite at the apple. I hope we'll get more, but it really depends on who's going to permanently occupy the next slot. I'm not fully confident that the guy from the Southern District of New York is going to continue Tulsi Gabbard's legacy. But it is another opportunity right now to examine the evidence that the American people were told for years either didn't exist or was some sort of crazy conspiracy theory. Tulsi Gabbard has done an amazing job. And given what we know about the intel oligarchy, she has equipped herself well to serve the American people. All of this, all of her work, was done much to our intel overlords' dismay and terror. And we'll get into the specifics of the director's report here in just a moment. But the nuts and bolts of it are that Anthony Fauci is a generational serial liar who funded bioweapons. Full stop. Now, one of those bioweapons accidentally or unintentionally escaped from a lab in Wuhan, China. Now, that is where my own thinking begins to diverge, the accidental part. I don't believe COVID was an accident. Some people still do, and that's fine. Funding gain-of-function research certainly wasn't an accident. That's what a lot of this report lays out. And the pardon of Anthony Fauci wasn't an accident either. And so if my intuition is correct, the obvious truth is that Fauci couldn't have done this alone. The intel oligarchy, the deep state, likely elements of the United States military had to be involved as well. And if that is true, it means parts of the United States government didn't only turn against Trump, they didn't only turn against the American people during an election year. It means that parts of the United States government turned against the entire world's population. Think about that for a second. Which, again, if that's true, it means that the United States of America was party to an action that puts this country, our country, in the history books with some of the worst governments of all time. Stalin's Soviet Union, Mao's China, Hitler's Germany. According to estimates, the COVID excess mortality rate, meaning the deaths from COVID and the deaths caused by the lockdowns and delayed medical care and a lot of other variables, is somewhere between 15 and 20 million deaths of people worldwide. Think about that for a minute. Just kind of marinate on that for a second. Those are the stakes, and that is why there are people within the intel community who I believe are responsible for this, including Anthony Fauci, that are going to do anything they can to keep this idea from being a common dinner table conversation. Like, the sky's blue, we all agree. The U.S. government intentionally released a virus on the entire population and killed millions. They don't want that to be just a common fact. Something tells me those numbers, by the way, 15 to 20 million deaths, they may get revised down now that those numbers in today's context hurt the World Health Organization's political causes instead of help them. So if the outbreak was intentional, it changes things in a giant way. It's Friday. Happy Friday to everybody out there watching. Happy Kwanzaa. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
Paul Harrell program.
Yes, I know. It is. It's not Kwanzaa. It's Juneteenth. So I want to give a shout out to the LFA chat. As always, we're broadcasting from the great state of Arkansas here on LFA TV, as well as the Paul Harrell program, YouTube, Ex-American News, Facebook, and also Hometown TV in North Central Arkansas. We really appreciate everybody out there who's watching, and we'd love for you to do all the things. If you're watching on LFA TV, we want you to like, we want you to subscribe. If you're watching on the Paul Harrell program YouTube page, which we're trying to grow, we want you to like, subscribe, click the little bell to receive notifications. Smash that like button, as the kids say. I'd very much appreciate that. So we're going to talk about this Tulsi Gabbard thing. We're also going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, because, you know, over the night you've got Israel and Hezbollah fighting again, or Hezbollah and Israel fighting again. And again, it's like one of those things, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because you have people saying, well, Hezbollah struck Israel first, and then you have other people saying, well, Israel just refuses to leave, and they've displaced 200,000 people in southern Lebanon, and you just wonder, like, how in the world is this actually going to work out? But it still doesn't change the 30,000-foot view is, and the 30,000-foot view is that the American economy is suffering. President Trump knows that if this continues the way it's going, his legacy may very well be a global depression. And that's why, from what I can tell, the administration is out. They're done. They're over. And J.D. Vance is doing a great job. J.D. Vance is coming under coordinated attack for criticizing the government of Israel. And, of course, there are many who are saying, oh, he's now anti-Semitic for simply criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu, which is ridiculous. But, you know, we've got clips on that, by the way. And J.D. Vance actually said to Allie Beth Stuckey on her podcast that this is very similar to racism, that if everything is racist, like the left's been doing for 20 years, then nothing is racist. Likewise, the caution is, if every time you disagree with the government of Israel and everything is anti-Semitic, then all of a sudden none of it is anti-Semitic. It's pretty incredible that's coming from the vice president. But what you also have to understand, and that what a lot of people are not willing to entertain, some on the internet or whatever, on X, is that J.D. Vance taking to the podium. Have you ever considered that J.D. Vance taking to the podium yesterday in front of the White House press corps, that he is saying those things because President Trump wants him to say them? Ever thought about that? And he's already parodied. I mean, in the last 3 weeks, President Trump, according to Axios, and Trump confirmed this in an interview, he called Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, an effing idiot who would be in jail if it wasn't for him, okay? So President Trump himself, to all of the neocons and the pro-war party, President Trump himself has already basically said that you can criticize the government of Israel and not be anti-Semitic, unless the neocons want to say that Trump now is anti-Semitic, which I suppose they might say that. Who knows? But let's stick first with, I'm going to ramble, you'll have to forgive me. Let's stick first with what's going on with Tulsi Gabbard. Here we go. Let's get into it, right? Big deal. I think last Friday we had the disclosures of the bioweapons labs. Last Friday, Tulsi Gabbard disclosed the bioweapons labs in Ukraine, as well as other places, which was also considered a conspiracy theory by some. The Biden administration saying back in the day that it was pro-Russia propaganda to suggest that the U.S. had funded bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Of course, she released that that's exactly what's going on, which really puts things in a lot different context. It's a kind of closer to the context that I articulated in the monologue about what exactly, how does the rest of the world view America if we're funding research bioweapons, if we're developing bioweapons in other countries that we can't legally develop here? We don't want them in our country, but we'll put them in your country. What does that exactly say about us to the rest of the world? Just something to think about. Headline, from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Fauci funded Wuhan lab research that sparked COVID. Instead of reading all of that, why don't I just play for you the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. This is what she said on her last day in office.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to big pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
And we do know the truth, and much of the truth is what we've already been here. We've already come to these conclusions for a while, but it's great to have the government officially recognize it, even though people will try to undermine it. We still have career communists that are still, operating inside our intelligence community, they say. I call it an oligarchy. And they must be held accountable, and Anthony Fauci must be held accountable. A few of your comments over at LFA TV in the Rumble chat there. We've got MD USMC 77 writing, Fauci committed treason by making our military weak by mandatory jabs and kicking them out. Treason at the highest level. I think that's exactly right. What happened with the military, and also you get rid of anybody in the military that, and this was kind of the broader play. Had things not unfolded electorally, what could have happened, the people left there. Not that there weren't good people that just, took the shot anyway. There were, but it means that there's also a lot of people potentially willing to follow orders at all costs. And again, if the intel community oligarchy has weaponized itself against the American people, how long until the military openly does that as well? That's the risk, I guess. Also, Fauci better have a passport taken and on a no-fly list. Matter of fact, he better be in Gitmo by tonight. Yeah, that's the thing. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, I believe this was under I think it was under Pam Bondi. I think they dropped the AutoPen investigation. To where they were going to actually pursue, hey, look, we think Joe Biden was selling pardons, or the people around him were selling pardons. Staffers were selling access to pardons. And then Fauci gets his pardon. And did Joe Biden even sign it? Was it just the AutoPen? So, yeah, there are real questions in here about accountability, and we need to get them answered as soon as we can. Here's the Last Refuge's take on this. Back on June the 12th, he said, you cannot disprove the truth. What you state is exactly why the COVID response, how they reacted to it, and all the control mitigation stuff came from the intelligence community and military. Now, this was in response to a tweet that said, COVID was used to destroy Trump. Prove me wrong, it was intentional. Now he's saying, and by the way, the Conservative Treehouse, which is the same thing as the Last Refuge, has been really a good resource, to keep, it's very interesting opinions by him. He's been in Tulsi Gabbard's quarter this whole time, saying, thank you, Gabbard, job well done. The elephant is smaller now. This kind of goes to what I was saying at the top of the show about bite at the apple. We get a couple of these bites of the apples. Now, I was hoping she was going to release more reports before her final day today. I was hoping for the 2020 election report that has been ready since June, been on Trump's desk since June. I was hoping she was going to release the 2020 election report. We're not getting that. Will we get it in the future? I have no idea. And I don't. At this point, everything is so up in the air. I don't think there's anything that we can say for certain going forward about the 2020 election report showing foreign interference in our elections. And that also, I really hate that too, because Emerald Robinson, to her credit, has some very interesting reporting. And I don't know. I mean, I've reported on it, right, about why Trump was elected in 2024, why the steal did not happen in 2024 the way it obviously transparently happened before us. I was wanting the 2020 election report to come out to see, okay, how much of Emerald Robinson's reporting will be confirmed, how much of it won't be confirmed. I was really wanting to know, get a gauge here. What is the government willing to admit, right? And I think with anything, keep in mind, Tulsi Gabbard is saying that Fauci was responsible for the unintentional lab leak, meaning he funded it and then it was unintentional. But I don't believe it was unintentional, okay? Just like there's other things in the 2020 election fraud. There's varying degrees of fraud. Obviously, the mail-in ballots. Obviously, I believe the voting machines are corrupt because we're talking about ones and zeros, and with artificial intelligence, it's just like, don't have a lack of imagination. We shouldn't let technology, especially with the rise of AI, pick our leaders. It just makes no sense. But then you get to the Venezuela connection, because there are some people that think that Maduro, one of the reasons, many reasons, but one of the reasons Maduro got nabbed was because of Venezuela's software, that this software that ended up infecting, or the software that was used in these voting machines, a lot of redundant companies that are named different but essentially do the same thing. It came out of Venezuela, got to the shores of America in Florida sometime in the early 2000s. Now, when you start going down that path, then you start thinking, have we had a legitimate election since the 2000s? And Emerald Robinson's story goes something like they got the data to Elon Musk, and Musk knew that it was real. They were going to steal it, and there was a counterattack on a computer lab in Serbia to make sure that Donald Trump, that Kamala Harris would not win, or they wouldn't be able to steal it for Kamala in 2024. I don't know if that's true, but I'd love to read Tulsi Gabbard's report on what she thinks when it comes to foreign involvement in our elections. We don't have that yet. So I am disappointed, but at the same time, I also appreciate the environment that Tulsi Gabbard is in. The head of the Select Intelligence Committee, Rick Crawford, was in that chair right there 3 weeks ago telling us that Tulsi Gabbard's DNI operates on CIA computer systems. So the CIA has an open book test. They can see what she's doing, which gives validity to the CIA whistleblower, the only active CIA employee to ever testify before Congress, actively saying, look, they're basically trying to sabotage this. So we will see. I want more. Here's some more fallout. Here's some more reaction. Or actually, this is from Tulsi. She says, I walked out of the office of DNI headquarters for the last time. Thank you, President Trump. I remain grateful for the profound honor of serving the American people and our nation as the Director of National Intelligence. Senator Rand Paul, who has been one of these senators who has gone directly after Fauci in a variety of different ways, says on her last day, DNI drops a bombshell with even more evidence of Fauci's collusion with a politicized intelligence community. This release includes additional documents revealing the truth about the lab leak origins and Fauci's lies to Congress under oath. I've referred Fauci to the DOJ multiple times for criminal prosecution over his web of lies. Thank you, Director Gabbard. We also have this. So this is Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, also thanking Tulsi Gabbard, saying that we now know for certain why Joe Biden gave Anthony Fauci a pardon. From this point on, the only time we should refer to him as a doctor is when we call him Dr. Death. The man is literally a mass murderer. Yeah, I agree with that. Anthony Fauci's a mass murderer, not only for funding the gain-of-function research and trying to cover it up to save his own skin. We're not even talking about remdesivir. You guys remember remdesivir, don't you? This was the drug that Fauci recommended to everybody to treat COVID patients. This was the drug that was used as people got sick and walked into hospitals. They walked into hospitals and they never walked out. And we were all told, well, that's because the virus is that bad. It's that deadly. And, there were little signs. There were little signs at first. Fauci prescribes remdesivir as the treatment for COVID. And these New York doctors come out, the media, there, ready to report, ready to sensationalize everything. And the New York doctors, what do they say? They say, we don't understand this virus. It's out of control. We're getting these people in here, and they're developing secondary kidney infections because their bodies are taking on water, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know why this is happening. Well, the very study that Anthony Fauci cited as to why remdesivir needs to be used was a study that quit using remdesivir after 6 months because it was killing people and giving them kidney failure. Did you know that? It was an Ebola study. They were trying to find drugs that were effective with Ebola. And there was remdesivir and a few others that they were trying to stop Ebola. After 6 months, they quit testing remdesivir because it was killing people. It was giving them the same kidney failure that you were hearing here in America. And everybody just looked the other way. Now, there are people online saying, hey, I think remdesivir is actually making the patients worse. Now, so when you say like mass murderer, when Richard Barra says this guy is a mass murderer, he really is. Not just for doing gain-of-function research on bioweapons that you couldn't do in the United States legally, so you outsource it to China or wherever. Although I have some questions about Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who was doing that research right here in America. But, and by the way, go look it up. Rand Paul knows who Ralph Barrick is. You can look this up. Rand Paul wrote an op-ed on Fox News years ago wanting more answers from Ralph Barrick about this. But nobody wants to really talk about remdesivir. And we talked earlier about dinner table conversation. Like, if it's ever just standard dinner table conversation that your local doctor was following the advice of Anthony Fauci and giving people remdesivir, and it was the remdesivir that was killing them, even though it got recorded as a COVID death, there'll be a lot of people upset with themselves, but also with Anthony Fauci. So, yes, I agree. I also agree when he says best director of national intelligence in the history of the Office of DNI. That's what Congressman Rick Crawford said. Sat here on this show, said she was the best and she took her job seriously, was not just a placeholder, actually did the job the way it was intended to be done statutorily, and they hated her for it. They targeted her for it. People tried to promote rules that would neuter the position, all because she's the first one that wasn't in the club. Matter of fact, she's the first one that has fought wars overseas. You know, she fights wars overseas, right, in the endless Middle East wars. She comes back and is like, I don't recommend that. I don't think we should do that again. You're anathematized. You can only serve in government and serve your country in the military if you go overseas and fight and come back and become a government official and say, you know what, I wholeheartedly endorse that and recommend it for everybody. You need to do it too. But if you're somebody like her who went over there, comes back and says, I don't think these wars are actually good, you can't hold office, especially not in the intelligence agencies. Anyway, that's the way I see it. Gina Milan, quote, I'm sick to my freaking stomach reading Tulsi Gabbard's declassified bombshells. They laid out the entire treasonous plot, weaponizing the Zelensky phone call to impeach Trump, with Rudy Giuliani squarely in their crosshairs next. This wasn't politics. It was a straight-up coup by corrupt deep state actors to overthrow the will of the American people. These people belong in prison for this excrement, deeply disturbing and downright terrifying. So what do some of these documents say? I mean, my goodness, look at this. We do have some redactions here. But so what she's getting at here is that this wasn't just about COVID, that the documents lay out that this was a never-ending series of the intel oligarchy trying to take out Trump, okay? And so when she talks about how the entire treasonous plot, they laid out the entire treasonous plot in the documents, weaponizing the Zelensky phone call to impeach Trump. Why did they weaponize the Zelensky phone call to impeach Trump? Now, you're going to have to bear with me here and just remember, why did they weaponize the phone call with Zelensky to impeach Trump? Could be a lot of reasons. He mentioned Joe Biden, who was, one of the potential candidates that was going to challenge him in 2020. I actually think, though, the phone call in mentioning Biden made Biden get in the race so that he could use running for office as a means to insulate himself from prosecutions. Because who wants to prosecute your political opponent? That was back when that kind of thing was frowned upon until they did it on Trump. The real reason that phone call was flagged was because Donald Trump mentioned CrowdStrike. He mentioned that Ukraine, to Zelensky, he said that Ukraine has the servers, the DNC servers, were actually with CrowdStrike, and they were in Ukraine. These are the DNC servers that were supposedly hacked by Russia. So now you have to go back even further. So so the Zelensky phone call ties to Russia hoax. What had just happened before the Zelensky phone call? Robert Mueller had testified. You remember? Robert Mueller had testified and concluded Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. So they have to use the Zelensky phone call to reignite the smoldering narrative that Trump is a Russian agent. Okay. So those were the series of events. Russia. We're going to get him. Of course, we now know that the Russia investigation with Mueller was more about covering up what the intel agencies had done than it was about trying to get Trump, because they actually, they put a geriatric patient, Robert Mueller, on the stand. He clearly didn't know what he was doing. It was foreshadowing what we were all going to have to endure with Joe Biden for 4 years, okay? And just everything was laid out. And so the fact that Gabbard is in these documents about COVID, connecting this to the Zelensky phone call and the fake impeachment, which, Gabbard also has revealed, what begins to formulate is a series of different plans. A series of different plans that just kept failing. Plan A, Russia, then that doesn't work out. Plan B, he's targeting his political opponents, although he's really asking about the DNC server, because if the DNC server wasn't hacked by Russia, who was it hacked by? Well, that brings us to Seth Rich and that conspiracy theory that we're not supposed to talk about, which will eventually be revealed that was true, that a DNC staffer was the one that leaked the emails and that he was murdered, allegedly. But no, if it was Russia, then we can use that piece of information and we can, potentially, if Hillary Clinton wins, we can go to war with Russia via proxy in Syria. And then, of course, Trump won, and they didn't get their war in Syria that they really wanted. And so they waited for Biden, and then they got the proxy war they wanted in Russia and Ukraine. This had to go a little further north. So that's kind of how I see the world. But there's a series of plans, plan A, plan B, and then COVID was the plan. COVID was like, well, it's an election year. What are we going to do? The red-headed libertarian says, quote, Fauci appears to have been the mastermind behind a crime against humanity. His pardon for any potential crime was signed at the 11th hour by the auto pen. This stain on the world needs to be investigated by a third party and adjudicated by the Supreme Court. In the meantime, other countries should charge him with bioterrorism, and the International Criminal Court should charge him with crimes against humanity, and states should make his life hell with civil offenses. I totally agree. I mean, it needs to be done. If anything, maybe it'll get Fauci to roll on somebody above him. Bucklebrush Jones in the LFA chat. Julian Assange said it wasn't Russia. It was Seth Rich, and they used Abrego Garcia to murder him. Oh, interesting. So you think it was cartel-related hit? Let's see, what else do we have? People are praying for Tulsi Gabbard in the chat, urging people to pray. MD USMC 77. Tulsi has a gigantic target on her back. We all have to pray for God's ironclad protection for her and her family. W. Wilson, 1964, writes, and Trump has known this all. This is why he makes the decisions he does. People need to stop questioning him. What else do we have? Gabbard will go down in history as a hero. Bad Moon writing, depopulation is real and was planned, a brief in 2008 by the World Economic Forum. Yeah, so you can kind of have this Venn diagram of different circles of, different goals that, could certainly be accomplished. I mean, it's no secret that, there are obviously still people in positions of power that think the world is overpopulated when in fact, actually the decrease in populations is going to hurt, right? It's going to hurt the whole planet. We're actually looking at a situation where we don't have enough people to do the things we need to do to keep things going. But maybe the real reason they wanted to depopulate is because they knew AI was going to take over. And you've got Novel Harari, the gay guy, the gay lieutenant in the World Economic Forum, who said, we don't know what we're going to do with the people. I mean, transhumanism is going to be a thing for the wealthy and the elite. We don't know what we're going to do with the average worker. And he literally said at a World Economic Forum event, video games and drugs kind of is like immersive video games and drugs is kind of the only thing we got so far. So the more of us there are, the harder we are to control. And this kind of leads, you talk about overpopulation, this if you really look, I'm going to reiterate this because this is in my opinion, a salient point that gets glossed over, and I didn't come up with it, but Jeff Younger convinced me of this, and he's right. Out of everybody in the world, for the most part, the only people who still generally agree with the Bill of Rights, the two big ones are, the right to free speech and the right to privacy. Let's say that I think those are the two biggest ones. I can say what I want and I have a right to my privacy. The American middle class, that's it. The American middle class, okay? We are, in general, the very, very wealthy, they don't really care. Very, very poor, they'll do anything to get out of their poverty. You kind of can't blame them. American middle class, though, we believe in free speech. We believe in the right to privacy. Now, there may be some stirrings of that in Western Europe as the migrants, are beheading people. But I'm not even sure those are a majority anymore because there's still some that are so, consumed with the DEI, woke sex, religion, brain rot. I'm not really sure that it's a majority, But I think the American middle class believe, hey, I'm an American and I have a right to be left alone. Go away, kid. You're bothering me. This is actually becoming more and more unique and more of an anomaly compared to the rest of the world. So how do you end that? Well, you shrink the middle class. You invade the country with a bunch of third world barbarians that don't believe in those things. And then at the same time, you engage in, depopulation efforts. Depopulation efforts could be things like putting a virus out intentionally so you can sell people the vaccine that is actually not good for them, that actually gives you myocarditis, a phrase that was most people never heard of myocarditis, couldn't even say the word, pronounce it correctly before the shots started rolling out. You could do it that way. Another way you can end the population is through abortion, okay? 50 million babies have been killed since 1974. It's way more than that now, but it's even more than that when you consider the babies would have had babies and the babies would have had babies by now. That's another way that you shrink the middle class, okay? And then the latest one that's patently obvious is the trans sanity. We have, and this is directly tied to the Great Replacement, which is, about decreasing the amount of white people that are allowed to have a country. And so most of the trans stuff that's affecting, young women and young men, it's affecting white men and white young women. And what are they doing? Well, if they go through the hormones, or if they certainly go through the surgery, they're literally giving up their right to procreate. They're literally not going to be able to have children. That's depopulation. And that is one of the reasons why. So President Trump, I'm going to reiterate this, President Trump, of course, comes out and says, with his executive order, we're going to ban child genital mutilation. Why hasn't the Republican Congress passed a bill codifying that exact executive order? Why hasn't the Republican Congress codified that exact executive order that Donald Trump said you cannot mutilate the genitals of children and call it health care? Republicans haven't done anything with that. Why? A standalone bill. It would pass. It would have to pass. Why hasn't that happened? And this is the sad truth. The giant Republican donors who play both sides don't want it to happen. Why? Maybe, just maybe, shrinking the middle class, continuing to war against the middle class is the objective, is the goal. Something to think about. Something to think about. All right, it is, 42 past the hour. Let's reset here. Let's take a quick break. This is the Paul Harrell Program. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back here in just a moment.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red 5.
I had 5 units that I purchased for the practice right out of the chute. Well, those went the first week that I got back to Houston. So then we ordered another 5 and then another 5. And I think over the next, 6 to 8 weeks, we had ordered like 35 units. And they're gone. They're still gone out of the practice. So we're excited about moving more of these units for our patients because they need them. And so when you bring in new technology and your staff's thinking, oh, this is another thing that I need to handle during the day, I think it's a good idea to give them a little incentive. And I do it as a team. So if one person does well, the whole team does well. So they all support each other. And they got really excited about that. They love it. They'll bring a unit in, turn it on, put it on the patient's foot or leg, and they'll tell the patients, be sure to talk to Dr. Parker about red light therapy. And the patient will say, red light therapy, yeah, I've heard of that, And so I'll walk in and my nurse is she'll tell me, I've spoken to Mrs. Jones about this red light therapy, and she's really excited about it. So Red Vibe has been fantastic for our bottom line.
This is our family dog, Bubba. He is a Shorty Jack Russell, and he brings a lot of love and laughter into our home. We just want to thank Pet Club for making healthy food and treats for our animals. Bubba has been on Pet Club food for a little over a year now. He really likes the Sequoia dry food, and then I put a scoop of the Sequoia wet dog food in there with some hot water and stir it up, and he absolutely loves it. And he likes the mush puppies, but his ultimate favorite is the antlers. Those keep him busy for a really long time, and he really likes them. It makes us feel really good that the food and treats that we give him have healthy ingredients in them because we want him to be around for a really long time. Our previous dog was a lab, and his name was Titus, and we fed him in bulk, and we would just get his food from the big box grocery stores. And unfortunately, that food wasn't very healthy for him, and he ended up getting cancer and passing away. So we didn't want to make that mistake with Bubba. So we were really fortunate to find Pet Club and find some really healthy food for him to eat. So we would just like to thank Pet Club, and we just really appreciate the healthy food that they make so we can keep this guy around as long as we can.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red 5.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, it's Happy Kwanzaa to everybody out there. The federal banking holiday as the whole country celebrates Kwanzaa. I told many in the chat don't know it's Kwanzaa today. Let's see here. So during the break, I said Happy Kwanzaa, y'all. We've got some people, and then I asked who's celebrating Kwanzaa today. Apparently, none of you guys are very festive. We've got Glenn Dean saying, Kwanzaa, what is that? Bucklebrush Drone says, I'm still celebrating George Floyd's sobriety. I think Bucklebrush Jones knows what I'm doing here. John Yarder says, I am celebrating my 38th wedding anniversary. John, congratulations, my friend. That is awesome. Congratulations. It is amazing to be married. It is a good thing to be married, and it is incredible to be married 38 years. I'm coming up on 18 years. Let's see, what's today's date? Probably 3-4 weeks I'll be on 18 years, and it's incredible. You know what's crazy about that is I did a whole monologue on this a while back now, where I highlighted all of the parachurch ministries, a lot of the Christian websites that post articles, and some of them are very good articles, about Christian walk, sanctification, that sort of thing, biblical truth. But there was, over the last 20 years, kind of a fad across all denominational spectrums, for the most part, about warning single ladies they don't want to idolize marriage, or warning single men not to idolize marriage. Then there were other articles about idolizing motherhood. Don't make motherhood an idol. Don't make your kids an idol, and all of these things. And it's just like, wow, that's really the priority with the Christians today, when our society has the lowest marriage rates that it has had ever. Our birth rates are collapsing. We're murdering our kids, and we're telling young Christian women that they shouldn't idolize the family. And by the way, shouldn't idolize anything, but is that really the risk? Is that really the sin risk right now, is trying to somehow tell young men and women that maybe their anxiety or their anticipation, anxiety is the wrong word, maybe their desire to get married is a good thing and it's healthy, and you should pursue that. You should pursue that end, because that is what you need to do. Better to be married than burned with passion, that sort of thing. It's just kind of crazy when you think about it. It's like, wow, that's not it at all. And it's kind of in the same vein. There were some sermons delivered and churches delivered, or websites with articles in the wake of the gay marriage ruling. Gay marriage, okay, destroying the institution of marriage. There were some people who preached sermons to their congregation about, maybe you're too upset over the gay marriage ruling and you're idolizing the family. What a great tactic to get the congregation to sit on their hands and not organize politically to try to reverse certain things. Yep, Sly 57, and a high divorce rate. You are exactly right. You are exactly right on that. Calpurnia 61, congrats, John. I'll be 35 years in September. That's great news. Obviously, I know it's not Kwanzaa. I'm sorry, I'm making a joke on this Juneteenth thing. It is Juneteenth. It is not Kwanzaa. It's Juneteenth. I am... I know this is... Okay, I know Juneteenth is like an event that a lot of black Americans have been celebrating for a while, right? The news of the emancipation, gets to the last slaves in Texas. Like, I'm aware of the story. But the whole reason why it's now a federal banking holiday is because of George Floyd. And that's why it's a difficult thing to, that's why it's a difficult thing. Like, the whole thing, the reason it's actually recognized is because of George Floyd. And, of course, we know the narrative surrounding George Floyd is based on lies. Is based on fentanyl-laced lies. We know that. And so it's like, okay, whatever. And I will tell you this, though. Talking to business owners in my own community, this banking holiday is very inconvenient for them. I mean, like, even bankers that get to take the day off are just like, it is been a nightmare this week getting ready for this banking holiday. Wire transfers getting cut off yesterday, and many people not going to be able to get their paychecks until Monday. And I know that happens on any holiday that falls on a Friday or a Monday, but it's people still haven't adjusted to it, I guess, right? This is only, the second year? Is this the second year it's an official holiday? So people haven't adjusted to it yet. And a lot of people, I am told, are saying, wonder why Trump is still keeping this around. Why hasn't Trump canceled Juneteenth? And my answer is like, there's literally no way that happens. There's literally no way that would ever happen. That would be the most based thing President Donald Trump could ever do, is get rid of the federal banking holiday for Juneteenth. That would be incredible, incredibly politically volatile. C. Michael says a few years just annoying. Let's see. Glenn Dean says Obama's term, gay marriage became legal, so his marriage to the first dude would be legal. I don't know. Illinois may have already had gay marriage at that point. Who knows? Hands up, don't shoot. Another lie. Yeah, that's true. So I'll comment a little bit more on the whole Juneteenth thing later on, because Obama's out there talking about it and once again criticizing the founding fathers in a intentionally historically illiterate way, to try to support his modern 21st century politics, which are race-based communism essentially. So we'll talk about that. And there's also I think there's an article in the Federalist telling why we conservatives should embrace it. And again, the reason why I think conservatives have it, it's not that we're for slavery. It's that it's a tough thing if you really understand the context of why it's a federally recognized holiday. It's because of the George Floyd lies. So it is what it is. But sound off. I mean, did you guys notice any of that stuff about the even focus on the family? This was the key kicker in the monologue I did weeks ago. Even Focus on the Family had their ministry for young adults posting articles about, be careful, you don't want to idolize getting married. What are we doing? What are we doing? Makes absolutely no sense. And, yeah. There hasn't been an appropriate, thorough admission and postmortem of what has happened in terms of the communistic presuppositions that have been accepted into so many areas of our life, including, in general, the American church. There's a lot of people that don't even realize they have been brainwashed through an education system that has them accepting communistic ideas as like the acceptable reality. And you're seeing people start to question that, and you can go too far with that, of course, but you can go on the other side of the road and then cross into the ditch there. But anyway, what are we going to go to next? Okay, yeah, let's get to the Middle East. Let me check if there's an update first on what's going on in the Middle East before I get to the most current thing. So, I mean, I've got this headline here that's saying that Iran has closed the Strait again, the Strait of Hormuz, by J.D. Rucker. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm going to refresh my Twitter feed real quick. Hang on one second. I've got a lot to get to, Rest. Okay. All right, no. All right, so let's get to it then. Here's the Gateway Pundit. This is what happened over the last 24 hours. Israel and Hezbollah agree to a renewed ceasefire after overnight strikes as Iran imposes new restrictions on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So last night, depending on which version of events you subscribe to, Hezbollah launched rockets. Israel then launched their rockets, or their weaponry, and about 20 people died. I think confirmed 4 Israeli soldiers died, and then Lebanese, we're told they were terrorists, although we don't really know. There's difficult to, it's President Trump that said, hey, you don't need to knock down a whole building. I don't think they knocked down an entire building this time, but I could be wrong. You don't need to attack Beirut. I don't think they attacked Beirut. But what apparently is at issue is that while we're dealing with Iran, Israel has displaced, I didn't know this until today, 200,000 Lebanese, and they're saying they're not going to be able to return to their homes. They're basically taking the land of Lebanon in the south there. Iran doesn't want that to happen if we're going to move forward with some sort of peace. And again, the cards remain what the cards are. I mean, Rob and Eric sat here yesterday and were saying, they think Iran is going to break the agreement. Okay. And then I said that may happen. But I said, I actually think Israel is not going to stop doing what they're doing in Lebanon. They're not going to pull back. And I think that is what you have to worry about. And by the way, that's not just my opinion. That's what J.D. Vance is saying. That's what President Trump has been saying is Bibi has got to stop doing what he's doing. And so we have now Israel and the United States that now have two different objectives, and that is patently obvious. It's patently clear at this point. And President Trump says we've got 4 weeks of oil left. There's other people that say that, hey, look, this may trigger a global depression, and that's another one of the reasons we're just essentially saying, hey, we're going to cut some sort of deal. We're going to get out of here. We're going to remove the blockade. We got to get the oil flowing again. Now, before the show started, I was talking to a relative of mine who's in town visiting, and he's actually in the oil and gas business, and he said that a lot of these Arab states, a lot of these Gulf states over the last 10 years have really done a lot of work on their infrastructure to try to bypass this whole Strait of Hormuz problem, topography problem, by creating pipelines and stuff like that. He said if these pipelines had not been built over the last 10, 15 years, that this crisis we would have had $200 a barrel of oil. And that how in the next 10 years, 10 years from now, that this Strait of Hormuz problem actually may be not even an issue as they continue to build the oil pipelines into the future. And I believe he knows what he's talking about because this is literally his profession. So the price of oil, dictates whether or not it's profitable to, do exploratory drilling or that sort of thing. Here is Vice President J.D. Vance. So these are some of the So over the evening, I witnessed this and I tweeted about this. You can follow me over on X at Real Paul Harrell. Everybody that is pro-war, pro-Israel, or an American neocon, which means you're pro-war and pro-Israel, they were all piling on J.D. Vance, to the point that even pro-Israel voices now are starting to say that this is actually politically really bad to try to pile on J.D. Vance because it's going to hurt Marco Rubio's chances. And I'll get into those tweets here in a minute. But here is a professor by the name of Jeffrey Lax. He did not like it when J.D. Vance said this.
All the Axios report, that Netanyahu is fuming. That's not reflective of the conversations that I've had with him, but maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me. What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members, Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
Those were very strong words from an American vice president. We've had very strong words from our American President Trump. over the last 3 weeks concerning this very issue. And the people that were all for war have now turned on President Trump. Apparently the polling in Israel for President Trump he's not as popular as he was 3 weeks ago. And that's got this guy, Professor Jeffrey Lax, saying this man cannot be the next president of the United States. I was shocked at these disgusting, morally reprehensible comments. Also, what a huge lie that Israel has no staunch allies besides the U.S. But even if it was true, why on earth would you say this except to cause it? It's these kinds of reactions that are going to make people like Israel or be sympathetic to their cause even less. Because I think a normal, rational person listens to what J.D. Vance says, in a world where there are other countries and that we don't have these, that just because you're allied with a country doesn't mean you're the same country. That's the whole point of being an ally. You still maintain the difference between the two nation states. But to call what J.D. Vance just said there disgusting suggests that you, who are offended by that in that way, to call it disgusting, that you're detached from reality. And it is also, let's be clear here. This is something you say when you have come to the conclusion that somebody's an anti-Semite. Oh, that's disgusting. And you got to say it with your eyes closed. Oh, you got to clutch your pearls. Disgusting. Disgusting. Bucklebrush Jones in the LFA chat. Israel needs to listen to JD again closely. Here's President Trump sitting down with Axios. This is what he said.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean,
How?
I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say.
Are you going to be able to control Israel?
They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say. That's going to make Mark Levin go absolutely nuts. But I mean, this is 100% true. Like, they depend on us. Essentially, how is Israel really, when you look at the situation that they're in, how are they anything but a welfare state if they're this dependent on us and our weaponry and everything else? Then logic would suggest, yeah, you are going to do what the American president says. Now, the Last Refuge Conservative Treehouse says that statements like that you just heard is a positive development, because when Israel doesn't do what the president says, the veil of pretense, false respect drops. And that is what we're witnessing right now unfold before our eyes. And the next 60 days, because this memorandum of understanding is going to continue as further, as hopefully they meet. Let's assume that it continues. The next 60 days, you are going to see an information war, the likes of which we may have never seen before over this issue. And it's going to be incredible. Here, case in point, as the strikes were going on last night, the war continuing, Iran pulling out of talks in Switzerland, JD not going to Switzerland, Mike Pompeo, didn't he get his security clearance stripped? He's out there signaling, I want to thank the IDF, I want to thank Mossad, I want to thank Israel for killing Hezbollah. You're going to see so many people counter-signaling what President Trump is trying to accomplish here by getting us out of this conflict. Alex Bruowitz saying, hello, Mark Levin Show. An Israeli source confirmed to the Times of Israel that the Israeli government will be using you and other right-wing media figures to try to influence the president's deal. The Times of Israel says that Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, plans to use media figures such as Fox News, Mark Levin, and pro-Israel politicians to get his message across to Trump. This is going to be this is going to be at an 11 over the next 60 days, so gird your loins. From Axios this morning, quote, frankly, if I were the vice president, I'd send the neocons flowers for their gracious help in making him face this and making him the face of the Indian war. This is talking about Vice President J.D. Vance. Aaron McIntyre says neocons think they can still dictate the opinion of the base, and their personal despair reflects that of MAGA. In reality, Trump dictates the opinion of the base, and as soon as he was done with Iran, so were they. It's Trump's party now. We're seeing very much a boomerang on the narrative since this thing kicked off in February. Now we have a guy by the name of Tamir Morag. Okay, he says, when J.D. Vance says tonight that Trump is the only head of state who knows sympathy for Israel today, and that 2/3 of the defense means that protected Israel were produced by American workers and funded by the money of American taxpayers, the subtext of his words is, no one likes the state of the Jews, which lives off the money of American taxpayers. So you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot of things that, and maybe it ends tonight. Maybe we go back to bombing them this weekend. I don't know. But you're going to see a lot of people twisting not only J.D. Vance's words, but you're going to see them twisting President Trump's words as well. Mike Cernovich says, J.D. said worse about Ukraine, period. Stop the woke scolding. It's tedious and doesn't even work. We're at the point now where you are digging yourself into a deeper hole if you want this to continue. And again, what are the options of continuing this? Boots on the ground, we will take thousands in casualties. The American people have no stomach for it. President Trump does not want another forever war. He has said that. And that's why all of us were not supportive of the war, because we know how these things work. We know once you start something, you don't necessarily control how it's going to end. You don't know what alliances are going to call up. You don't know what the global economy is going to do. And these were people that were saying, Iran is this giant country. They are not the same as in Afghanistan or in Iraq. They are much more technologically advanced and have higher IQs, honestly. Not the same thing. Cernovich again, how many ground troops? Where would they deploy to? Or would the IDF mass mobilize as well? How many Marine battalions? How many tankers are you willing to lose? How high could oil get? How many civilians dying? Those are questions no critic of the Memorandum of Understanding wants to answer. Aaron McIntyre, the truth is that Israel is not sovereign. It can't fight a ground war. The game was always trapping America to fight a war they couldn't, and it failed. Israel is not a serious power, he says, if it can't compel American action. Again, I read that last night, and that's when I was like, yeah, the word welfare comes to mind. So you're either going to let the president of the United States be the leader of the free world, or you're not. And right now we have an obvious dissolution of what used to be very monolithic. But we have two different goals. And then you look at the 30,000-foot view. This was another good post by Cernovich, who said, one group, during all this when it kicked off in February, one group was saying Trump was blackmailed by Israel. The other group, that those people are panicans. Now it's Trump hates Israel, or Vice President J.D. Vance hates Israel. But it's he says lots of derangement on either side. But by the way, Israel publications now are slamming. They are slamming President Trump now, and I'm going to get to those here in just a moment, just so you can see what exactly is going on now. Let me look at some of these comments in LFA first. Carl Benji. Oh, I thought they owned Trump. So yes, exactly right. You're seeing this. I think we're just seeing more truth rise to the surface. Okay. Logue 23. Hey, Paul, you rock. Thanks, Logan. I appreciate the shout out, brother. I think you appreciate that. Old Dog 1959 writes, I don't have a problem flipping out Mark Levin. Israel is not sacred and holy, and they can get their excrement together like everybody else. Keep them coming, guys. Logan 23. Hey Paul, isn't the Strait open? Will Johnson said it was open. I know it was open a few days ago. I could be wrong on that. I had refreshed a headline and that's what it said, but it did link to a Substack post. I don't know how current that is. The Strait very well may be open still right now. I'm not exactly sure. Although the Gateway Pundit did say, now this was, when was this? This was 10:45 a.m. New restrictions on ships. Iran imposes new restrictions on ships in the Strait because of the fighting and skirmishes. So that may not necessarily mean that it's closed. Okay, so Will could very well be right. I'm not exactly sure. Also, USA beats Australia 2-0. Did you guys see where the Scots are drinking Boston Dry? Old Dog 1959, no, the Strait has been slammed shut temporarily. Okay, so we've got, you guys are news hounds out there while I'm live on the air, so that's good. Now we have this poll here. I don't know how accurate it is. 23 hours ago, Open Source Zone, approval of the preliminary U.S.-Iran agreement, 56% approve, 13% disapprove. It's a Qantas poll from the 16th to the 17th of June, so this week. 56% approve. Now, this is interesting because Fox News Radio this morning when I was coming into the studio, they were saying that 56 or 60-something disapprove. So you're going to have to watch. Fox News is going to push criticism of the Memorandum of Understanding as much as they can. Mark Levin does not like that this... Mark Levin does not like that the Times of Israel says that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to use him as a mouthpiece. Jack Posobiec mentioning, well, I'll be oinked at the news. And so Mark Levin, what source? What source would that be? Excrements? My views have been the same for 55 years, Mr. Producer. No matter the president or prime minister. You're both unethical stooges. Yeah. All right, now here we get to the political aspects of it. So Steve Deace, who is generally a supporter of Israel, and he says this is for my Israeli and Jewish friends. So he's trying to give his Israeli and Jewish friends a little bit of advice. He says, who I stand with against the anti-Semitism infesting our ranks, to explain why I do not share their criticism of Trump's deal here. So Day says, I like the deal. But I'm going to give an olive branch to those trying to, you know, these Jewish and Israel friends. I want you to know something. He says, it is Trump's deal. It's not JD's. Trump is president. And CIC, despite attempts by some to use this as a proxy for 2028 by claiming otherwise. And take my advice here. If you prefer Rubio in 2028, the worst way to try and make that happen is to make Israel the key distinctive issue between he and JD. That will only feed the anti-Semitism we oppose, while also effectively branding Marco as Israel first before the nihilistic voices we are confronting do it themselves. This is a warning from a friend. But you never know. From what I'm seeing, a statement like that, they could anathematize Steve Deace before the end is over. Say, Steve Deace is an anti-Semite for even saying that. I could easily hear somebody responding there to that from what I'm seeing online. Obviously, I haven't seen that specifically referred, about Steve Deace, but that is. It's interesting. So they're saying right now, because there are so many people out there trashing JD last night and all saying, Marco Rubio, Marco Rubio, Marco Rubio, we've got to back Marco, we've got to back Marco. And he is saying, guys, you are not keeping your powder dry, and all you're doing is actually making JD Vance the front runner of front runners for 2028. From a political standpoint, Steve Deace is exactly right. That's exactly why they're saying, if I were J.D. Vance, I would send the neocons flowers, because their reaction to this is actually helping him. For all of us that have the trepidation, and all of us that really are that believe that, hey, America first means America first, and we don't want to get involved in foreign entanglements with Ukraine or Israel or anybody. This is helping J.D. Vance politically. And again, it could hurt him too if this all blows up and it becomes even worse, and J.D. Vance gets all the blame for it, which is now going to be a play as well. Jesse Kelly, Trump miraculously found a whole group of newfound friends when he started dropping bombs on Iran, and they abandoned him the second the bombs stopped dropping. Viva Frey calls them the whores of war. And then we have the GOP. And I've got a take here that I'm going to get to here in a minute. Here is the GOP as well as the Democrats. We have a bipartisan group of senators that all of a sudden want to lock arms together and sing Kumbaya and talk about how bad the memorandum of understanding is.
Giving billions of dollars
Ted
to
Cruz.
theocratic lunatics who want to murder us is not a good idea. I think the president, unfortunately, is receiving bad advice on this deal.
I was just going to ask you about the Iran deal.
That's Lindsey
What do
Graham.
you think about it?
I'm going to Disney
This whole
World.
nuclear deal now, no better than what we had back in 2015.
Elizabeth Warren.
Back when Barack Obama cut the deal. And that's where Donald Trump winds us up after all of this. What an embarrassment.
We went to war for what? The idea of doing something in the Straits of Hormuz. The Straits were being used peacefully before our invasion, and now we have to negotiate they'll be used peacefully in the future.
It's going to get access to its frozen assets, and what is Iran giving up for this? Nothing. Nothing. They're merely reaffirming what they've said before about nuclear weapons.
Adam Schiff and all these people, Ted Cruz. All right, we're going to give these people billions of dollars so they can murder us. Look, man. You either come out for ground troops and thousands of Americans dead in another 20-year war and sectarian Iranian violence. You either come out for that, or you come out for a nuclear strike where we lose all moral clarity for the rest of our country's existence. Or you take a deal because the cards are what the cards are. The topography of the Strait of Hormuz is what it is. And this is why we haven't done this. Every time it's been proposed, we rejected it because of this very rock and a hard place that we are now in. So, yeah. It is what it is. I mean, I'm sorry you don't like it. You're not getting the result because the result was never just some sort of limited kinetic action. That was what we were told. I believe that's what, Trump and J.D. Vance, they didn't want a 30-year war. But the people telling them to do this thought that this would get us into where we can't, we've got to commit fully and we've got to go in with ground troops. Which would essentially turn President Trump into another George W. Bush. J.D. Vance knows that. Trump knows that. Hexeth knows that. Rubio knows that. Yes, I voted for President Trump 3 times. Correct. I did. Logan 23. Did you vote for Trump all 3 times? Yes, I voted for him all 3 times. During the primary, I backed... let's see. I was more of a back in the. Keep in mind, this was 2016, so this was Libertarian Paul. Okay, in 2016, I was more Libertarian. I wasn't in my banning things as good sometimes. But in 2016, I thought Rand Paul would be on a policy standpoint. I really liked his stuff, and I liked his foreign policy views. And I still maintain that Bernie Sanders supporter that shot Steve Scalise was actually trying to assassinate Rand Paul. I really think that's what was going on there. Because they were trying to get Trump to go to war then, and he wouldn't do it. But anyway, yeah, there was a time when I voted for Trump in 2016, but there was a time after he won the nomination, I was kind of wooed by the never Trump idea of things, you know? Just because I was mad I guess at that point, ironically enough, Ted Cruz was it was between Ted and Donald, and I was just mad because Ted talked about the Constitution, Donald Trump didn't talk about the Constitution, and I was in this talk radio bubble back in 2016. I was on talk radio every day, and the talk radio, that's curated by the Drudge Report, and it kind of gives you everything you're supposed to talk about, and it ends up being just a crutch, and it was. And there's other crutches now, too. X is certainly one of them, as most of my articles are X articles. But I was mad for about a week, and considering, just not voting. And then Hillary Clinton, opened her mouth, and you're like, oh, my gosh, okay, I'm going to vote for President Trump. Or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And so, I voted for him in 2016, kind of just got nothing else to do. Enthusiastically voted for him in 2020. Enthusiastically voted for him in 2024. So that's kind of my journey. But no, I didn't. I voted for him all 3 times. Here's the thing, though. Do you remember the article we covered yesterday in the Daily Caller? The article yesterday in the Daily Caller said, senators behind closed doors say they hate Trump, and they hate him so much that they will never support the SAVE Act because they hate Donald Trump personally. Do you remember that? What do you think those senators' opinions are on neocons and foreign wars? They're all for them. So here's the deal. There is now a strong contingent within Washington, D.C. that now wants the deal to fail so that it will, I'm just telling you right now, so that it will destroy his legacy, so that it will hurt the economy and the Democrats take the midterms. There are Republicans right now that not only want the Democrats to take the midterms, they now want to use a forever war to help the Democrats do it. Here's something that'll illustrate the debate for you. Rod Dreyer about J.D. Vance. But is he wrong? I'm a Christian Zionist, an unapologetic supporter of Israel, but I have a bad feeling that Vance is describing geopolitical reality here about how Israel needs to listen to America on this and stop the nonsense. Rod Dreyer says, I'm a Zionist. I think Vance is right. Quote, I hate it, but we have to deal with reality. We have to deal with geopolitical reality. So John Podhoretz says the geopolitical reality that Jews have to cope with anti-Semitic Catholics with real power is 2 millennia old, is 2,000 years old. Now, that's kind of a mask-off moment here. It's like everything's fine. Everything is fine. We're all fine. We all sing Kumbaya until you say no one time. And now all of a sudden it's like telling a woman no. The one thing you're not supposed to do. It's the unspoken blasphemy law in our society. You can't tell women no. And apparently you can't tell the nation state of Israel no. Pretty crazy here. Matt Walsh, really impressed by the clips of J.D. Vance from this week. Incredibly talented and very gifted communicator. And he's actually a conservative. More than can be said on all of the above points about most Republicans. Yeah, keep that in mind. Now here is Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein is Jewish. He says Israel, which I love, needs to snap out of its delirium ASAP. So it's not all Jewish people that are attacking J.D. Vance and President Trump. He says J.D. Vance is sending a message. Israel needs to listen, not respond, not argue, but listen. Bibi needs to be out of office. The new prime minister needs to understand that hybrid war / cheap drones and missiles changed everything. Wow. And again, it's that same clip that's been circulating where all JD said was, hey, guys, Trump is your ally. Don't criticize him. Don't criticize the deal. Don't, because you're actually isolating even further a guy who is on your side, but just doesn't agree with your strategy, tactics, and goals at this point. He wants to get the global economy humming again, and he wants to win the midterms. But in Israel, this is what they said yesterday. Today, at the newspaper owned by Trump's biggest donor, Miriam Adelson, quote, "You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed. Mr. President, you have gravely harmed the human interests of the enlightened world, and you may be remembered forever as the president who brought about America's humiliation. You betrayed us, the Israelis, and in a single moment, the contempt you once faced suddenly seems so justified and logical," Danny Zakin writes to the U.S. president. So that's an Israeli publication saying that because of Trump's memorandum of understanding that he signed, they're saying that he betrayed the Israelis. And again, what's the alternative? Sending people to die. The alternative is, so if they think that's a betrayal, that we're not willing to send our own American sons to die in Iran, if that's a betrayal, well, I guess we're the betrayers then. I guess we're betraying. We're betrayers because we are not willing to send more American soldiers to die in the Middle East. What is this tweet here? Yeah, so here's another clip. Here's President Trump. This is also making Mark Levin furious. This is more from that. Is this the Axios report again?
If it weren't for Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu worked well with me, but he will tell you, we're the ones with the guns, we're the ones with the whole deal, we're the ones with the B-2 bombers, etc. If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
Your relationship with Netanyahu's...
It's good, but we have to keep him a little bit sane.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean,
How?
I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say.
So that's an extended clip from what we covered yesterday or earlier in the show. And the extra stuff we got there is President Trump saying, "I have to keep Bibi Netanyahu sane." Another way to say that would be, I have to keep Bibi Netanyahu from being crazy, which, by the way, is what he called him like 3 weeks ago. And he said, not only are you an effing idiot, you would be in jail if it wasn't for me. What are you doing? And now he's clarified even more, and he said at the G7 this week a couple of times that you don't fight Hezbollah by knocking down entire buildings with civilians in them. That's not how you fight Hezbollah. It is incredible what we are witnessing. Absolutely incredible what we're witnessing. Let's power through with these tabs here. Mark Levin. So this is Yair Lapid, translated from Hebrew. I'm assuming this guy is some sort of Israeli politician or spokesperson, but I don't read Hebrew, so I don't know. But he says this: in the past day, the U.S. Vice President got angry at a press conference over Smotrich and Ben Gvir, Foreign Minister Saar, and cut ties with the European Union's foreign minister. And President Trump said Netanyahu is showing irresponsibility in Lebanon. If we don't quickly replace this government, Israel's foreign relations will be wiped out. Mark Levin says, "You fool! Lapid! You're giving voice to what was a terrible smear of your entire country dressed up as something else. It'll be used by the haters here to justify more of it." Mr. Producer, I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it. Then we had this. In the wake of the fighting, in the wake of the fighting last night, we got this from the same guy that was just called out, Ben Gvir, says, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. How are you going to get the Strait of Hormuz open with that kind of attitude? That is crazy. All of Lebanon must burn. For every tear an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers have to cry. How do you do this? How? What is the path forward with that? That is crazy. By the way, this post violated the X rules. However, X has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the post to remain accessible. Wow. Elon Musk for the win. Elon Musk for the win. This is incredible. They're allowing his comment to remain up about Lebanon burning, which is showing in some of the an Israeli official's official stance on what they want to happen, on their mentality, on their disposition. Kind of a genocidal disposition, if you ask me. And X says it violates our terms of service, but we're leaving it up because it's in the public's interest to know what's going on. More information is better. That is Elon Musk for the win. Glenn Dean says Elon is a wild card. That is so crazy to me. I just now noticed this. That is nuts to me that they've left the post up because they know it is so bad that they have to let the people see it, so that the American people know exactly what the conflict is. That is crazy. Robert Barnes says, you belong in a prison asylum. Wow, they're leaving it up. That is crazy to me. I'm sorry. That is a man. Hang on a second. That is like a That is a huge data point there. That's a huge data point in the geopolitical shift that we are currently witnessing. That is crazy. Then we go back and forth here. Okay? So Dana Lash, really pro-Israel, really against the Memorandum of Understanding. She says about Joe Kent, he's totally okay with Iranian-funded Hezbollah attacking northern Israel, though. He just wants them to take it so he can pretend that Iran isn't violating the ceasefire by continuing to terrorize the area. Again, obviously, I don't think anyone's disputing that Hezbollah is fighting, but the issue now is the land grab, the Israeli land grab that has taken place. And by the way, people are now even saying, there are now the message somehow has gotten out because you have people that knew nothing about what was going on in Gaza, and they're now average people are like, why is Lebanon involved all of a sudden? So public opinion, I think, and again, what do I know? I'm just saying, I suspect public opinion is changing in a big way. Now, Joe Kent, who took all this criticism because he resigned, because he could no longer prosecute the war, right? He could no longer do his job because he didn't agree with the war in the first place. But he does say something here that caught my eye. He says, for the Memorandum of Understanding to hold and result in lasting peace, we must restrict aid to Israel immediately and make it clear that we will not defend them should Iran opt to strike in response to Israel's attacks in Lebanon. Israel has not responded to our verbal and written demands. That is not going to change unless we change it by action. Israel claims sovereignty and continues to threaten our peace deal, yet they rely on us to bail them out. We have to respond accordingly and stop the cycle once and for all. Lead with action, remove their leverage, otherwise they will not take us seriously. So, I know there may be a lot of you out there that, were not on the, were very mad at Joe Kent when he came out and resigned in the middle of all this. But he's proposing, he's not the only one saying this. and again, President Trump saying they're going to do what I say. Well, what happens if they don't do what you say? There are other ideas you can consider to make Israel do what you want to do so the strait stays open and we don't have a global depression and we can focus on America and we can focus on the domestic policies. We can continue to focus on holding our corrupt government accountable and stop this nonsense. And I'm probably too optimistic. Forgive me, I'm probably too optimistic on that, but I'm going to be optimistic anyway. I'm not going to black pill. The Last Refuge. This was an interesting comment. I'd say I feel like this show, I know I use a lot of other people's content, but I'm trying to put together a tapestry for you because I think there are some really good ideas that maybe you don't see on other shows. He says, I carry a general ambivalent sense about the Iran stuff, and I have no idea why. He says, that said, this is what's actually going on right now. He says, teaching the Iranians a new strategy and how they can hold the world hostage with control over the Strait of Hormuz, and the newfound discovery about using that leverage to politely confront and damage Israel reputationally, while simultaneously never having to exert any military action, is quite remarkable. It's an insurgency mindset with a strategic political component that will likely prove much more effective than anyone ever thought possible. As long as Israel keeps killing people, Iran will shut down oil flows. If Israel stops killing people, Iran will reopen the strait. The pressure from the world upon Israel will be 1,000-fold more effective than a kinetic weapon. Iran will remove Netanyahu from power simply by exerting power in their own backyard. So what they're saying here is this meltdown, this belligerence, you're actually digging your own hole deeper. You're digging your own grave here. Of course, none of this matters if the United States capitulates and doesn't if we capitulate and just allow Israel to do whatever it wants in this, then none of that matters. But if we do something about it, we're talking about a sea change. Okay, so let's talk about anti-Semitism, okay? Let's talk about it. J.D. Vance goes on with Allie Beth Stuckey. Now, I want you to, before I play this clip of Allie Beth Stuckey and J.D. Vance, I want you to read, this is Benjamin Domenech. Benjamin Domenech is on Fox News all the time complaining about the Memorandum of Understanding now. And he says, what you're about to hear, J.D. Vance, he says what you're about to hear is Israel derangement syndrome with the vice president. Batya Ungar Salargan says, a major silver lining of this difficult week has been the total unmasking of the vice president. So there's this coordinated attack on J.D. Vance, calling him and what he's saying, calling him basically an anti-Semite. J.D. Vance, though, so keep that in mind. They're basically saying now that what you're about to hear from J.D., this is a new clip, is anti-Semitism. I'm going to play it for you, and you tell me who's the more reasonable in these two takes versus what J.D. Vance actually says.
And so I do think that sometimes, advocates of Israel or pro-Israel people in the United States make two critical mistakes. One, on the one hand, is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests, because they're not always the same. But the second is always conflating criticism of a particular government with Jew hatred. Because if everything is Jew hatred, then nothing is Jew hatred. I actually think Jew hatred is very bad, which is why I think we have to be very careful about not calling it's kind of like how progressives for 20 years called everything racist. And if everything's racism, nothing is racism. And we have to be very careful not to, in order to serve a certain foreign policy objective, try to criticize somebody as anti-Semitic when they're just not.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. And I think that distinction is important. However, from my vantage point, it seems to me like the bigger problem is I I don't know exactly how I would describe it in a way that would be charitable, but almost like Israel derangement syndrome, going beyond, okay, yeah, we don't like Israeli policies. We don't think that we should put the priorities of any country first. Completely agree with that. That's fine. But the obsession that some people have, I would say on the right, with blaming all of their problems on Israel, all of their disagreements with Trump on some secret Israeli influence. And I'm not saying all of those people hate every Jewish person, but it seems to get there really fast. I see that more prominently on the right than I see true Israel first kind of obsession that you seem to be describing.
So I see both, and I think both are bad. And I'm probably particularly sensitive to the first thing because of the last 2 days I've been defending the president's decision to end the Iran deal. And I find often the arguments are, well, Israel doesn't think this is good, therefore it's bad. And my reaction is Israel's opinions matter, but fundamentally they are separate. But you're right. I mean, there are certainly people who take every frustration with the Trump administration, every policy disagreement becomes because of Israel. And that is absolutely wrong. And again, I think that is one of those things that can bleed into some very dark places.
Yeah.
So I think that it's upon us as leaders, as public commentators, to just try to be very rational about this, to try to distinguish what is legitimate disagreement from ethnic hatred. And you just got to be careful about it. But I actually think both the Trump administration, but the right generally is in a place of figuring this stuff out. Any debate, every debate, has excesses on either side, but that's part of the process of figuring this stuff out together.
So the reaction to that clip, yes, there are people that are like, every time you wake up in the morning and stub your toe, it's the Jews' fault. There are those people out there. There's also the people that are saying any criticism of Israel's anti-Semitism then there's no such thing as anti-Semitism. I mean, like, you're basically hurting yourself. You're doing the racist thing. Woke Wars 1. Now we're in the middle of Woke Wars 2, according to some. J.D. Vance, though, is saying, but we can walk a tight rope here. We can have these discussions and actually figure it out on the right. We can figure this out on the right without being anti-Semitic. And the response from that rational, I believe, statement, and actually a really helpful summary of the debate that is going on. The answer to that is Israeli derangement syndrome with the vice president. They're basically saying that J.D. Vance is now an anti-Semite because he openly criticizes Israel and how they are behaving in light of taking so much of our own taxpayer money to support themselves. I really want your comments on that. What do you think about that? It's kind of, I thought it was a very good statement. Let's see here. What do we have in the comments section? Logan 23, where is the anti-Semitism at exactly? Let's see. What else do we have? Well, anyway, let me know. I mean, I don't see how you get. I don't see you out of that. I don't see how you get these reactions. And the reactions themselves are just going to make people even more suspicious. A major silver lining of this difficult week has been the total unmasking of the vice president. And that clip is an unmasking. What did he say in there that is immoral or wrong other than he's standing up for America as the sovereign? As the sovereign. Okay, so I don't know. It's crazy to me. Let's see, what else do we have here? More of Mark Levin show. I don't want to listen to that. I'm bored. What else do we have? Yeah, JD. lost my hats. Anyway, we're going to take a break. I think I've said all that I need to say on the subject at this point on this particular. I mean, we spent an hour on this now. We're going to move on to the Kwanzaa celebration. I'm sorry, I mean Juneteenth. We'll move on to that here in a minute. Kind of get your thoughts on that. But before we do, we're going to take a break, and I just want to remind everybody about these red light panels. You hear me talk about them a lot. You hear the ads, but red light therapy can. I think red light therapy can drastically heal your body in ways that you can't even imagine. This is called photobiomodulation. Okay, and you see it right there. Photobiomodulation is something that stimulates the mitochondria of your cells. Now, these particular red light panels from Red Vive Health do all kinds of things. There's anti-aging benefits. It can help your hair regrowth. It can relieve your eye fatigue. One of the things that I do on this channel, I mean, obviously I'm in front of screens all the time. I've got these giant white lights above my head right now as I'm doing the show. The red light is so nice to your eyes in a way that you don't even know. Increased testosterone. Hey, guys, it does. It works. The testosterone increase with this red light, it's a family show, but you can. I think you can intuit what I'm talking about. Okay, so just think about that. What the red light does is it increases blood flow to all parts of your body. The near-infrared light stimulates the mitochondria of your cells, penetrates to your organs, your bones, your deep tissues, your subcutaneous fat. It makes your body think you've had a workout when you actually haven't. That's why it's so good at healing. It's so good at arthritis relief, pain relief in general, inflammation, cellular energy. I want you to give it a try now. You will not be disappointed. They have financing available. You can try this for 60 days and send it back. 2-year warranty. It's incredible technology, and I want you to give it a try. But in order to give it a try, you have to go to redvivehealth.org/Paul. That's redvivehealth.org/Paul, and you will save. I know they're not cheap, folks, but they're not cheap because they work. 35% off with my promo code Paul. That's redvivehealth.org/Paul.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red Vive.
I had 5 units that I purchased for the practice right out of the chute. Well, those went the first week that I got back to Houston. So then we ordered another 5 and then another 5. And I think over the next, 6 to 8 weeks, we had ordered like 35 units. And they're gone. They're still gone out of the practice. So we're excited about moving more of these units for our patients because they need them. And so when you bring in new technology and your staff's thinking, oh, this is another thing that I need to handle during the day, I think it's a good idea to give them a little incentive. And I do it as a team. So if one person does well, the whole team does well. So they all support each other. And they got really excited about that. They love it. They'll bring a unit in, turn it on, put it on the patient's foot or leg, and they'll tell the patients, be sure to talk to Dr. Parker about red light therapy. And the patient will say, red light therapy, yeah, I've heard of that, And so I'll walk in and my nurse is she'll tell me, I've spoken to Mrs. Jones about this red light therapy, and she's really excited about it. So Red Vive has been fantastic for our bottom line.
My name is John, and this is my beautiful wife, Lori, and this is our Star Wars Ewok. His name is Scout, and we have Scout for about 11 years now, and we started noticing about 3 years ago he started slowing down. He was unable to jump on the bed. He was kind of a little bit grumpier. And when my daughters, Macy and Mariah, would take him on walks, he would walk for about, 30 yards, and then he'd lay down, and they'd carry him the rest of the way. So I heard about Pet Club 24/7 and about the products from a gentleman that I really trust and share a friendship with. And he mentioned to me that they have products that are going to help him with his arthritis, help him build his immune system. And I said, okay, no problem. Let's try them out. And I kid you guys not, within about 2 to 3 days, we started noticing a little difference. And then we took Scout on a walk probably about a week after we started using the products, the mush puppies, and he would walk the entire way. He would walk at least a mile, and it's just been completely amazing. He's a new dog. He's 11 years old, which is around 80 years in dog years, and he's just happy. He's more energetic. He's not the grumpy old man he used to be, and we're just so thankful. And it was perfect timing because we lost our boxer Yankee about 1.5 years ago, and it was really hard on us. So I'm so thankful for Pet Club 24/7 for the products that they offer. Imagine if you could have your best friend around one more day or one more week or even one more year. I'm so blessed and thankful that we were able to find this company and find these products for Scout. So thank you guys. Give it a shot. We appreciate you. God bless everyone.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, folks. By the way, happy Friday. I hope everybody out there has a blessed weekend. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. So, Logue23 says, "Hey Paul, can you come to Oregon and see me sometime?" I know. I've seen some of your messages, Logan. I just want you to know I see that you're trying to put together some sort of event, and you want LFA TV hosts to show up and stuff like that. I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I'm willing to listen and open anything, but I can't just fly to Oregon and hang out. Just on the fly, if you will. And number one, that that's first of all, I hate flying. That's the first thing. Not because I'm afraid of it, but I can't stand flying commercial anymore. It just makes me black pill on humanity, and I shouldn't do that. But number two, the Paul Harrell program currently operates on a shoestring of a budget, and so I can't be jetting off to Oregon anytime soon. So, but I appreciate the thoughts. I appreciate you listening. Bad Moon, Paul Harrell, happy Father's Day. Hey, thank you for that, and thank you guys for everything, and happy Father's Day to all of you guys. Fathers are what make the world go round. Obviously, they really do. The patriarchy. It's not a question of, and it's the design that the good Lord has intended. It's the good Lord that makes the world go round. But fathers are. It's not a question of patriarchy or not. Really, it's what kind of patriarchy are you going to have, and that really is. That really is the truth. It's very much a binary choice, and a Christian patriarchy actually loves God, and then in turn, ideally, would love your neighbor as yourself in a more in a way that's just better for everybody, honestly. But it starts at the home. It starts with the individual and building something with your wife and building your families and raising them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And so many things have been taken over by feminists, right? But ultimately, the patriarchy is still there, but it's just a feminine version of it where, women are actually more likely to be victims and that sort of thing. And then you also had the feminist infiltration of the church. It's kind of a trope now, and I don't know if it happens as much, but there was a time when men were noticing that on Father's Day, the sermon from the pulpit would be kind of trashing fathers and excoriating them for not doing what they should be doing. But yet Mother's Day gets treated totally different, and there's very rarely sermons in our modern context about how the sins that women tend to commit, like not submitting to your husbands and that sort of thing. Fundamentally, I just think the whole idea of trying to tailor a sermon to a specific day on Sunday is not my cup of tea. I would prefer just, hey, start preaching through a book of the Bible, and whatever verse is on whatever day we've designated Sunday, which Sunday is a holy day, 52 holy days a year in the Christian church. Just come together and worship the Lord. And on that, that's where I want to say it is the weekend. It is Friday. So Find a church that preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and his mighty ability to save sinners. If you don't go to church, please find one. I was talking with a listener who was on our YouTube channel, the Paul Harrell Program YouTube channel, and I had said this last Friday, and he says, you know, he goes to church and he worships God throughout the day and wherever. I'm sorry, he says he doesn't go to church, but he worships God throughout his day and in all that he does and that sort of thing. And I think that's fantastic that he does that. But I tried to encourage him. Number one, I'm thankful that he listens to the show, and he may be listening right now. But I commented in the YouTube chat, and I said, hey, that's great, but consider that there's something, obviously it's biblically commanded to not forsake the gathering of the brethren, but it's actually good for you. There are benefits to you personally and to those around you from assembling with the saints and worshiping God on the Lord's day. There are benefits of that. So don't deprive yourself of that, even if you're in this guy's in a leftist hellscape. And so there will be lights in that darkness. And find a church that preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And also consider this kind of free roaming Christianity where I don't want to join a church or be accountable to a church or anything like that. Consider you're also depriving yourself of the body that needs you, that needs to go to battle with you, that needs you there also. Don't deprive yourself of other saints that need your own wisdom or help or service in this battle, in this spiritual battle, where every Sunday we gather to protest the lies of the world, the devil, the lies that our flesh, that we tell ourselves that we are guilty of believing from time to time. And we come and we put it all aside and we say that Christ is supreme, Christ has dominion over all the earth, will have dominion over all the earth. And we come together and we praise him for saving sinners like us. And we are called to do this every single week. So I don't apologize for preaching about the importance of church and the importance of Christ on my own show. I almost apologized. I'm sorry if I seem preaching. I don't apologize. It's my own show, and that's the way I like to end it. So, Eileen Jimenez, great show, Paul. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you out there for watching, all of you out there for listening. Before we go, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, New Horizon Real Estate, Red Vive Health, Gateway Sight and Sound, Pet Club 24/7, and Sherrod Chiropractic. God bless. I will see you guys Monday early because I'm filling in from LFA TV. I'm filling in for Jeremy Harrell's show on Monday and Tuesday. So you'll be hearing me 4 hours. I'll still be doing my normal show at 3 Central, but Monday and Tuesday I'll be filling in for Jeremy as he's on vacation. God bless. We'll see you next week.